The following presentation contains subjects and videos that are considered controversial and may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Good morning. This is Real Talk. Give it up for our hosts, Sonia Cheltenham and Bobby Smith.
All right. Good morning. We're getting ready to get started on Real Talk, and we've got a great show for you. But you have to know there's no titles,
No gimmicks.
no judgment,
Real people.
real issues.
This is
Real Talk. Our subject area today is going to be good trouble, and we're going to get knee deep in trouble. It's going to be hot. Stay with us.
Exactly. And so, as you all know, we have the quote of the day today. Y'all, please forgive me. We have the quote of the day, and we're going to get right into it. This episode is going to be dedicated to the Honorable John Lewis. And so with that, we're going to start with it. The Honorable John Lewis quoted us, and he said, "A democracy cannot thrive where power remains unchecked and justice is reserved for a select few. Ignoring these cries and failing to respond to this movement is simply not an option, for peace cannot exist where justice is not served."
Amen. That's a
What
great
an awesome
quote.
guy, right?
Great quote.
Honorable man, and I think it's so important that when we have these black leaders that we really remember them because they paved the way for a lot of us to be able to do the things that we do in America at this moment.
Yeah, and not just by what he did, his thought pattern was just, he was the greatest example of a servant leader I've seen in a long time.
Yes, he
and
was.
just a great man altogether.
Well, awesome. Today we got an awesome guest with us. And so he's a friend to us, and some of you might know him, some of you may not, but for those who don't, he is Mr. Ender Austin III. Let's give it up for Mr. Ender Austin.
The third.
Great to have you on the show today, brother.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Well, glad that you're here. We're going to jump right into it because we've got a robust show today. And so, if you wouldn't mind, Trey, can I call you Trey?
Yes, you pass the
All right,
seat.
All right, let's call you Trey. So could you briefly tell us about you and what you're doing and what's going, because you're a mover and shaker. So what's happening with you right now?
Yes, ma'am. So what's happening with me right now is I'm following in the legacy of John Lewis. I'm following in the legacy of Fannie Lou Hamer and being active in our community. And what that looks like today is working for the Biden for America campaign, specifically here in Nevada. Engaging folk on a daily basis, letting them know why this election cannot be taken for granted, why we absolutely not only need their vote, but we need their support. We need them on the background, pushing folk to register, pushing folk to make a plan to vote, all of the above.
Awesome, awesome. That's good to know. We knew you had gotten that elevation, saw your little picture in the paper and stuff,
Yes.
but we weren't quite sure what your position was. So let's just jump right into it. What is Biden's position? What's his agenda? And tell us, as African Americans, why did he pick Kamala?
So what's important about Joe Biden is looking at somebody, and somebody put it in these terms. If you think about a white man of his age serving behind a black man who was young enough to be his son, what that says about your character. Many of us in the marketplace, we've worked with people who were not older than us, but younger than us, but because they perceived their privilege to be better than us, they couldn't submit to whatever leadership we had. So understanding that he did that is amazing in itself. But Joe Biden has laid out, he and Kamala Harris have laid out how they believe our country needs to go forward, and they have the Let It Rise plan, the Lift Every Voice plan, which speaks to specifically to Black Americans, and a racial equity plan, which breaks down exactly what a Biden and Harris administration will look like. And I think he picked Kamala Harris for a few reasons. One, she's my soror. She a woman of Alpha Kappa Alpha.
I knew
man of
you were gonna
Alpha
put that in
You
there
knew it was
now.
coming.
I know it's coming.
And but also you look at a black woman who has a very, very interesting trajectory. When Kamala tells her story, she talks about the fact that she was raised in a family of activists.
Right.
And as someone in a family of activists, she went off to HU and, what we call, a lot of black folk call the Mecca.
Yeah.
She went to the Mecca and was so entrenched in that culture. And she came back to the Oakland area and she said, you know what? I think I need to go and serve in the DA's office, which a lot of us in the activist community would shun or we would look down on. But she
Right.
said, there's a way for me to make a difference in this particular area, and that's on this side of the field. And so she was able to implement programs that said, hey, I know you got a drug conviction, but what we're going to do is we're going to get you job training. So before any of this gets on your record, we're going to get you job training. If you complete the job training, we're going to wipe that drug conviction completely off the
See,
case.
that's good to know because most of us don't know that about her. I
Right.
know that she served in that department, and,
Right.
but you hear the downside where she's sending brothers to prison. She's sending, but we didn't get to hear that she was creating programs behind that too. So that's good to know.
Russia's doing their job, and that's why it's so important that forums like this, and I appreciate you both for allowing me to come on, but programs like this allow us to talk directly to people, and we're being inundated with memes, and people,
Right.
people think memes are more valuable than books these days.
Yes.
And so that's why it's
Wow.
important we
So
talk.
look, it's so awesome. I think that I'm a CNN watcher, and it's you never find out the truth. It's always something. And then 1 minute it's all negative, and even the things that per se the president does right, they're also viewed as negative. So we never get the real truth of what's right and what's wrong. So right now we're in the middle of this voter thing. So the question I have for you is, what is the Democratic Party doing to support voter rights here in Nevada?
So voter protection is very important. And so the one thing that was really, really great, and shout out to Jason Frierson, the Speaker of our Assembly, as well as Nicole Canizaro, the Senate Majority Leader. They came together with Governor Sisolak and Aaron Ford, and they said, we're going to get together a sweeping bill that changes the way voting looks in Nevada.
Okay.
Heretofore, you had to request a mail-in ballot.
Right.
Right.
And so because you had to request it, a lot of seniors would do it because they're like, hey, I don't want to get out of my house. I want to be able to mail it. But a lot of younger folk wouldn't do it. And now we're in COVID. It's a completely different landscape. So what AB4, and this is at the state level, what it did is that brought all these folk and said, hey, you're going to get a mail-in ballot by default if you register by a certain day. And if you haven't registered, you can go to nvvotesearly.com and register right now. But what that did is that said, hey, you're going to automatically get a vote by mail ballot. Then they went a step further and said, hey, people need to drop off these ballots and not have to wait in ridiculous lines. So they set up drop boxes around the city because there's a
Wow.
lot of people concerned about
That's
putting their
good.
ballot
That's
in the mail.
Right.
And so you can do a drop box, and then even further, the drop box, you put it in the drop box, there's a tracking code that you keep as your receipt, and you can follow it. You say, okay, it went from drop box A, it went to truck C, and now it's in this place. And so you can follow your ballot virtually
Wow.
until
That's
it gets
cool.
there.
That's cool. Give that where they can do that. NV.
NV votes early. NV for Nevada votes early. And that is going to allow you to make sure your registration is up to date.
Right.
If you move, because it's very important this year, if you move, you won't get a mail-in ballot because
Right.
you haven't changed your address.
Right.
So make sure you change your address because that's vitally important.
So it doesn't matter if you're 18 or 80, you can use this and sign up and do a vote. That's cool.
Absolutely.
And everybody needs to be out there doing that deal.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think I've gotten mine already.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh,
Mine
great.
came
I
in the
have-
mail, the voter
Fantastic.
registration stuff, and so me and my wife are gonna sit down and make sure that we vote, as I want all of you to make sure that you vote.
Now, thinking of voting again, and I want to take it a little deeper, a little bit, that, whenever there's a presidential race, it's a lot of hoopla, a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
But what the community, I believe, needs to know is that the lower level is just as important as
Absolutely.
this executive level.
Correct.
Like, we need to not just go, okay, I voted, that's it. We need to know about voting in Congress and then what's happening with judges. So my question to you all would be, what is the Democratic Party doing or going to do as we move forward to educate us? Because I have to say, as much as I try to stay informed and watching the news and whatever,
Right.
I'm not quite sure who's really for the community for our congressional level and then below that.
For the
And
city,
why
yeah.
can't the Democratic Party make a step and say, hey, these are the people that we, recommend, and this is where you go to get that list? Because I don't even know where to go get the
So
list.
actually on that
Neither
same
do I.
website, NV Votes Early, it actually
NV
has a
Votes
slate
Early.
of candidates.
Okay.
And so now that slate of candidates is not going to be robust with actually including policy stances, etc. But even today, the NAACP has a forum with judges because we've seen all these billboards. We've been inundated by
Oh, my
judges this
God,
year.
yeah.
Right.
And so
Right.
what they're doing is the NAACP has set up a forum so that judges can get together, they can talk about issues that matter, and you're positioned to better understand because judges are nonpartisan races,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And what we know is people like Daniel Cameron, who won't arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor. Daniel Cameron is there, and he's there largely because people saw a black face in the right space
Right.
and said, "Oh, this is good for us."
Right.
And didn't know what his policies were, didn't know how he felt about. Because in my mind, that's misogyny.
Yeah.
You must not like black women if you want to arrest those people that killed that woman.
Right.
And it puts
Wow.
them, when you look down and you really look down into the slate of candidates, you're able to make changes from the person who gives you who you have to go before when you get a speeding ticket, to the person who's going to make the bill that says whether or not we're going to hold police accountable for these shootings, all of that stuff.
And I'm glad you said that because really, intelligently, we're not just saying everybody black need to be in office because that's not altogether
That's
true.
not true.
And
That's
so
sinful.
it's real important that we know what they stand for and what their track record is like because, because I'm skin to you don't mean I'm kin to you.
That's the truth.
And so
Right.
that we do need a place, and maybe this suggestion, I don't know. I know that NAACP is doing some stuff and Democratic Party is doing some stuff, but if there was a hub
Yes, sir.
that people could be directed to, because I may not make the talk within the NAACP. You
Right.
may not feel safe being there. Maybe they're going to air it. I don't know. But if there's a hub that I can go to where I trust you all to say, these are the judges we recommend because just a little blurb, they stand for this, they believe in that, they're over the juvenile court, they have our young men and young women in mind. Those things are important because that's where we live. Now, I want the president to be the right person too. But what I'm saying is the
Yeah.
people that affect us on the day-to-day level are the lower level
Up
folks,
and down
right?
the ballot.
Yeah.
And so, I definitely agree. And what I'll do is I'll talk to President McCoy. It's going to be on Zoom. I'll talk to President McCoy
Oh, good.
and see if we can just get like get a few sentences about everybody. And
Right.
not only a few sentences
Yeah.
from them, but how we feel.
Right,
Right,
that's what we want to know.
Because the last voting thing what me and my wife did, we looked up every judge.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It took a while to vote.
Oh,
but
definitely.
we really sat down and said, okay, who is this person? Who do they vote? And you can't judge it by the cover, of course.
Right.
Because you just look at somebody and, people say, well, because the person's white, that means they're bad. That's not true.
That's not true.
So we have to really be conscious or cognizant of their track records, which to me is so important. So the next question is, how is the Democratic agenda affecting Nevada?
Right.
Because we hear a lot about, one thing I hear about Trump saying all the time is, well, these Democratic cities are in shambles. And truth of the matter is, a lot of them are. A lot of these big cities that Democrats are over are struggling with violence and don't get me wrong, I know there's a systemic issue with that as well, but far as Nevada alone, what is the Democratic Party saying? How are they going to help Nevada?
So I'm gonna cast down the evil imagination and the high thing that exalts itself above the knowledge of the Lord. When you come out and you only bring out the fact that these Democratic cities are in shambles, you forget about West Virginia that has been ravaged by the opioid crisis.
Right.
You forget about parts of Kentucky that are beyond poverty. You forget that that states that are red states, Alabama, is gonna be the largest recipient of welfare, of SNAP
Well,
benefits. et cetera.
I don't want to cut you off, but let me say this. This is politics, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what I found out, and I'm sure Americans all over the country hate this. If someone makes a statement, even though it's true, the first thing we do is combat it by saying, well, this happens over here too. But by doing that, we still don't address the fact that it's happening here.
I'm gonna get back to to where it happens here, but I
Yeah.
think that I think it's a misnomer to put it. You know what I mean? The way it's
Right.
being presented is that the problem that we have is that Democrats are bad at being mayors, right?
No, I don't
And when you
believe
look
that.
at
Right.
you look at Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, who's doing an excellent job in Atlanta, and then you look at the fact that a lot of these cities have a concentration of minorities, and because
Right.
there's a concentration of minorities, you're more likely going to have a black person killed by police. Right.
Right.
And so then
Exactly.
instead of having a long conversation, he comes to a short answer that doesn't have a really good perspective.
Right.
But
And so I can understand it kind of categorizes those cities as being, because they're Democratic, they're bad. But we clearly understand nothing's just bad because you're on a side of politics. It goes deeper than that.
Right. Well, I mean,
Right.
Mayor Goodman got on TV and said she wanted Las Vegas to be a petri dish.
Yeah, we saw that.
And she's an independent, but she
Right.
sounds really Republican.
Yes.
I'm not, I don't. But it is what it is. But I can say what's been happening in Nevada is we have the first black statewide elected official in A.G. Ford.
Right.
And A.G. Ford said
Yes.
in Nevada, if you kill somebody as a police officer, we will hold you accountable.
Yes.
We will
Right.
see what's going on.
good.
That's
Right.
the kind of leadership that inspires me as a father with boys to say, I need that.
Now,
I need
didn't
to
he
feel
also say that he pleaded to get more, if I'm not understanding, to get more responsibility, right? He asked the state, hey, I need more responsibility when it comes to police shootings and things of that nature
To make
so
sure
that
that
we
we
can
can
really
investigate.
investigate them.
Exactly.
Yeah, and when I saw that, I know a lot of times we protest for the big scheme, but when I really saw how Nevada was really starting to put things in place, it was like I felt a little more comfortable.
Definitely.
Knowing that
Definitely.
we have an AG, number one, is a man of color who understands the pullovers for no reason and things like that, but also that he was really pushing to get more, how should I say, more power to be able to prosecute these police officers that are just doing unjustly things.
And I won't tell his testimony, but when you hear AG's story, to hear the fact that he went literally from being a single dad on food stamps in Section 8 to having 5 degrees. He's actually Dr. Ford.
Oh, doc, okay.
With the EDD and a Juris Doctorate.
And a JD.
Right.
I mean, the brother is very, very, he's multi-degreed,
Yes.
very, very intelligent,
Right.
and went from having traffic tickets and warrants and a lot of stuff that's happened right here in this community
Right.
to being the attorney general and how massive that is.
That's huge.
Every time you hear a story, it helps you to understand the way he comes to the game. Like you were saying, Mom C, about not just looking at somebody, but looking at their history, knowing them.
Character.
You can't come through that struggle and then be at the place of an attorney general and not have compassion. I would preach right there, but I'm not.
We're gonna
And
buzz
compassion
you if you
is
do.
so important. Compassion is important.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, to not understand where people are coming from, I think is very, it's challenging because if you haven't had the experience, then you don't know the pain.
Absolutely.
And it's and on another level, it's upsetting that party lines determine what type of people you are, and that's just not true.
Not
it's
true.
it's like a prejudice that
Right.
okay, if you're Democratic, that means you go for everything and anything, and you want everything to happen, and anybody just do that, and that's not true.
Not true.
A lot of us stand some places higher on the moral area than those who are on the other side.
Yes, sir.
And so for him to say that Democratic leadership and those states are trash, it's just wrong. It's just dead out wrong.
And I'm gonna ask you a question that you might not have an answer to.
Yes, sir.
But since you're here, I would ask, do you know the tone? Because this is very disturbing for me. I look at Fox 5, and I'm sure most of us do, and most of us have probably fell into the trap of commenting. But I was very distraught at the number of racial statements that are being made every time Sisolak says anything. Everything becomes this race war.
Yes.
Everything becomes, I'm pro-police. You can be pro-police and still not like the fact that
That they
innocent people are
killing
being
people.
killed. Why do you have to be either pro-police or anti-police?
Yes.
The truth of the matter is people are struggling. So I know recently, about maybe 3-4 months ago, I got pulled over. And the officer was extremely nice, like beyond nice, because of the climate. And so do you know the climate, or are you guys studying the climate between police officers and civilians in our community?
Yeah, so I think it's a big part of that. So I don't have data behind that particular portion, but I
Right.
do have data on this portion that we're being inundated with trolls. And so what happens is
Right.
a troll jumps into comments on Fox 5 or whatever the case may be, and they get that fire going. And then those trolls, because they are so active on Facebook, the way the algorithm works, that gets bumped up to the right people's pages. So then as
Right.
soon as I'm another person who I may be a real person, not a bot, not a troll, but because as soon as I get on Facebook, this gets bumped to the top of my page because this troll sent it. Now,
Right.
and so then that creates acrimony. And we know that that kind of divisive language spills over into other areas.
Right.
And I've been really, really privileged with my former boss, Congressman Horsford, to sit down and meet with the Black Police Officers Association as well as Metro's union.
Right.
And talk to, and those are by and large different opinions on a lot of things. And I can share a conversation that I had. I won't quote the person, but he said we had a frank conversation with the sheriff and said this Blue Lives Matter stuff doesn't apply to us because
Right.
when we tell, he's a Black police officer who's been over 20 years of service. He said because when we tell our sergeant about things that are going on that we believe are racial in tone, we don't get the kind of support that we need.
Wow.
Up to
Okay.
and including, I know one person right now who had to transfer to a different department. He called out somebody for something racist, and he stopped receiving backup when he would go on dangerous calls.
Whoa.
Wow.
And so he had to
Whoa.
transfer somewhere for his physical safety,
Yes.
not his psychological piece,
Wow.
not what he needed to go. No,
Yes.
for his physical safety.
Wow.
And so we know, and I hope this offends people, but America is a country that has been steeped in racism.
Oh, absolutely.
It was
And
built
because
on
of
it.
exactly, and
No
because
doubt.
of that, you're going to have racism intertwined into many of our institutions. Most
Absolutely.
of our
Most of them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that is, as a person who's been caught up in that, been pulled over for no reason, just for being, I guess, Black and harassed and asked if I was in a gang, not pulled over because of gang activity, but that's the question. Asked if, are you in a gang? Are you this? Are you that? And so I know that can be a very frustrating thing for me.
Absolutely.
And it's something has to be done.
Yes, sir.
So just a tough situation. You know what I mean?
We've seen it in other countries. We've seen other countries tackle this head on. There are countries that do not kill anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's possible to do.
Right.
It just takes imagination, and it takes putting some stuff really out of our mind that we've held on to that have literally become gods in our society. We have to
absolutely.
smash
Right.
them down.
Yes.
And I think gun control laws help that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
If you put a gun store in the middle of a or near a impoverished neighborhood and people break into the gun store, now the police have to get bigger guns because now there's bigger guns on the streets.
Right.
And so now what they become is more of a military unit than a policing unit. And me having been in the military, police should not be militant.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Mom C can really tell us because she was in Watts when the police dropped off guns.
Yes.
And maybe not the police, but the feds dropped off guns in these communities.
Yes.
And literally, they one guy, I talked to a guy who used to bang out there. He said one day it was literally just a train. He said we watched the train for days trying to see why the train was just sitting there with all these guns on it. He
Wow.
said then eventually once we saw that nobody was watching it, then we grabbed them, we took them, and then a week later the bullets show up for the guns
Wow.
that were just dropped off. That wasn't a tooth fairy. That was deliberate.
Wow.
It
And a
was
lot
deliberate.
Of the, yeah,
Well,
it
in
was.
Nevada, people are buying guns. It is ridiculous at the people who are buying weapons. I know I recently got my CCW, fill out my paperwork, and when I was in the place, I mean, you have Black women 75 years old in there saying, I need a gun. And so I think everyone's arming themselves, and it almost seems like we're preparing for something,
Unfortunately.
So...
And to me, the question of the climate is that this is the climate.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that it has been established from the presidential level that there's just an overall feeling of instability and insecurity, like who secures us, who makes us feel safe.
Right.
And that, if I can't depend on the policeman in my community, who do I depend on? And so then you end up having to think, well, I've got to depend on my husband and my son and people around me, because even though I think the police department ought to be caring and compassionate enough to come and take care of us, I do know my family cares for me.
Hello.
So
Right.
then your protection goes there. So the climate that we're in now,
different.
it's not my parents' climate, and it's not your parents' climate.
Right.
Like, where we are today, none of us have ever been here before.
Never.
And we have not gone. So we're trying to navigate as we go, and things are really, really tough. So as we get to the bottom of this portion of our conversation, tell us whatever else you have. What do
Yeah.
you want
What's on your
our
heart
audience
to
out
know?
there to know? Like,
So-
give them what you want.
I'll say this, in the capacity I sit in today, one thing that I love, is that what Vice President, Biden is saying is that we're not trying to get back to where we were in 2016.
No.
His plan is to build back better.
Right.
And we've seen so many of these institutions be corrupted. We've seen so many science being questioned, a lot of things that really are absurd to us. But what I appreciate about Vice President Biden and Senator Harris is that they're saying we're going to build back better. And that should be a soothing balm to many of us who said 16 was cool, but Trayvon Martin and Eric Garner, like, all of these things happened during the Obama presidency.
Yes.
And it's not saying that we're going to go back there, but we're going to build back to a better place. And so if anything, I would say your vote is your voice. Dr. King said it well. He said, don't let anybody take your manhood, and I'll expand that to womanhood as well from you. You absolutely have an obligation to write this with the pen of your own hand.
Right.
And make sure that you vote. Early voting starts on the 17th
Yes.
Of October. And make sure you find yourself somewhere voting and using your voice.
All right. Well, I tell you what, it's been awesome having you.
Yes.
We're definitely going to have you back.
Yes,
because
indeed.
I think, especially closer to the elections, because I think it's important that not that we tell our listeners who to vote for. That's not what this is about. It's just about getting clear information
Yes.
on what is really going on in our society. Because honestly, I am shocked that we're at a point where we have a president who can say and do whatever, even to the point where once a police officer kills a black man, he won't even acknowledge the person who died.
Yes.
He just says, we need more force. We need more police. We need to, he's more concerned about the looters
Yes.
than the reason why they're looting.
Yeah.
And so that's a very tough pill to swallow, but that's just kind of the situation we're in. And I think when people thought racism had died out, Trump helped revive it, and so, or really just called them out of the dark places.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
I think he did a great thing, in my opinion, by things have to be exposed before they can change. And he has dug it all up
Yeah.
with his rhetoric and his statement. So, man, we definitely thank you for being
Thank you,
here.
thank you.
It's been a privilege to have you on our show. And with that, Pastor C, what do you have?
I think that we're going at this moment to moments of clarity, and we'll be right back with our next subject area. Stay with us. This is a moment of clarity. So in this moment of clarity, the first thing I want to talk to you about is that love liberates. What love actually does is frees the person to become the best expression of themselves. My second point is attitude is everything. Attitude determines your altitude. And the power is that you get to choose your attitude. You may say, well, what about all this craziness that's going on around me? That's not in you. It's around you. You can choose how you're going to respond to those things that are around you. If you want great altitude, get a great attitude. Number 3 is respect yourself. Before you can demand that I respect you, you must respect yourself. So you have to be careful what comes out of your mouth. You have to be careful about what you put on your body and how you carry yourself. Don't leave home with your house shoes on. Don't walk around with rollers in your hair. That's men and women. Respect yourself and show that you walk at a higher standard. And my next one is, you're more than what happened to you. A lot of us have been violated. A lot of us have been raped and abused and molested. We've been fired and pushed aside. Whatever the case may be, you are bigger than what happened to you. Don't let what happened to you frame your future. Deal with it and let it go. And last but not least, you can only love me as much as you love you. Affirm yourself and do like I do. Say, girl, you better than you think. You're going to be greater than you realize. This is a moment of clarity. This is a moment of
All right, you all, we are back.
Great segment.
Great
Ooh,
segment. I
that was
tell you
wonderful.
what, Ender had some awesome information.
Yes, he
and remember,
did.
it's nvearly.com.
Yes.
It's very important that you go there to get the information that you need.
And you know what? He's accessible too. So, like, if you hit him on Facebook or whatever, or through the Democratic Party, you have something on your heart and mind. It's always good to have someone up there that you can put your hands on. He's that kind of guy. You can put your hands on him and get real good, clear information on what you need to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, those of you that are watching, we're so glad that you're here, and we hope this has been informative. But this show is going to be a very tough show, very impactful, as it has already been. But we're going to hit on some real tough subjects that we're going to deal with. And the first thing I want to do is I want to clear up two words.
Okay.
Because what I found out is that everyone says that everyone's a racist. As soon as someone says something, you're a racist, or that was racist. And so there's a word called prejudice. And so I think it's very important that we define for the people what is racism and what is prejudice.
And it's real important that we know the difference, that we don't want to water down a term so that it loses its impact.
Exactly.
Because we have to know that racism has its roots in a system.
Right.
And it has its roots in power. And so if you are not able to move the system, if you don't stand in a place of power, then you or your group cannot be racist. And actually, if you look it up, the term derived from white supremacy. And so, though that's the dominant group at this point, they are the ones that are in power. And so they steep, they push, they run racism. Now, it is possible for black people not to like white people.
Right.
But on the real, it don't change nothing other than you don't like them.
That's
So what you're doing is you are prejudiced. It has not changed anything in the system. It doesn't change how people are hired for jobs, how others may look at them. You just don't like them. But when we deal with a deep system of racism, we're talking about something that affects all
of us. And you know, I just want to read the definition just because
Please.
I want to make it super clear. Racism defined is the systemic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic, and political advantage of another.
Yes.
It is not a statement. It is not a word. It is a systemic, social, and economic deprivation of a people. And I think when you look at society and you look at the different education programs and how, you know, in communities of color, the education system is faulty. You look at how the police the communities of color, and you look at just how things work. Then you start to realize no matter what I do, I'm always going to be in this system of racism.
Yes.
And I love what you said. There's nothing, black people can wake up tomorrow and say, you know what, we are against, you know, white oppression, and we're going to do, but it still doesn't change the system.
No.
Now, prejudice, by definition, is injury or damage resulting from some judgment or action of another in disregard of one's rights, right? Another one is preconceived judgment, which most of us understand, or opinion.
Yes.
So if I look at you because you're black and I assume you can dance and play basketball, that's prejudice.
Yes.
Right? When people say, you know, oh, black people love chicken and watermelon, that's not racist. That's prejudice. That's you're judging me based on the color of my skin to have certain traits, right? So I think it's very important that we understand that, because the term racist is just thrown around like it's
everyone.
Like it's everywhere.
But what we have to stay focused on, we have to stay focused on what is the issue.
Exactly.
And so all of us like deal with our prejudices. You may like this kind of food, I may like that kind of food. I may love this color, you may like that color.
Right.
And so I'm never gonna wear that color. I have a prejudice about that color. But when my choices affect a system, that puts down or injures or hurts a group or class of people,
Right.
we're talking about racism. And when a system that comes from like a police department or a government, a school system
Right.
that is earmarked against a certain group of people,
Right.
that is racism. You can change the teacher and not change the system, and have the same thing. And so we're not saying, at least I'm not, let me carry this and own this myself.
Right.
I am not for blanket defunding police departments.
Right, me either.
That is, show me another plan. That is ridiculous. I don't want that to happen.
Right.
But I do want the system torn down.
And
I want
changed.
it brought to its knees. And so whatever that, if that means we've got to take some of the money away,
Right.
because I don't know about other states, but in our states, the police department gets $632 million.
Correct.
How many guns y'all got to buy? Now, I know that includes salary and like that,
Right.
but that's a whole lot of money.
Whole lot of
and
money.
so can we redistribute that so that we make communities wholesome and healthy and working, and so that they work with the police department and not work against it?
And right, and when you talk about racism, when I hear people say that there is no racism. Mostly white people tell me like, there's no
yeah.
racism.
Right.
What was segregation?
Right.
White only fountains.
Yes.
Black people had to go into the back of the restaurant to get their food. These are all distinct racist systems, and this is at the lowest level, but these are the systems that are set up, just a small example of a bigger problem.
Right. And certainly that I have seen, we don't have a separation of small things like a water fountain or bathrooms or whatever the case may
Right.
be. But we do have a system in place that you could deny. To deny something means that it'll never be fixed.
Right.
That somebody has to be strong enough to stand up and say, yes, it's there. I've seen it there. I've heard my Uncle Bud say it, and he's a judge, and I know it's there. That we're going to have to be brave enough to say that it's there, and then determine that we're going to do something to change it. Because if my name is ethnic sounding and I apply for the job, regardless of my varied degrees or education,
Right.
I'm going to be judged on my name and ethnicity, not on whether I'm qualified, whether I'm educated enough. That is a system that keeps a group of people down. And if you go to buy a home and you want to buy it in a certain area, and I remember when my husband and I first moved to Nevada, which was in the 80s,
Right.
and we wanted to see houses, and we got a realtor, and this little lady, white lady, took us around to look at houses, and finally I had to say, I know there's houses in other parts of the city.
Right.
Because
right,
you haven't looked
right.
at our income. You haven't asked us how much can we afford to pay.
Right.
We haven't filled out an application that determined our buyability.
Right.
We hadn't done any of that. You're looking at our faces, our ethnicity, and determining we need to live in these portions of, so
Right.
we had to fire a girlfriend.
And
do
it
something
kind
else.
and again, it kind of goes back, as I was thinking last night about these whole topics we're going to discuss. When I look at segregation helped put racism into the systems that
Yes,
we have.
absolutely.
So if they say you cannot go to school with white kids, and schools are funded by neighborhoods,
Yes.
and they put us in these ghettos, which
Yes.
they put us there,
Absolutely.
and then we might have one or two teachers that were smart, got through the system, whatever, and now we're teaching all these kids
Yes.
that don't know much of anything,
Yes.
who don't have the funding because their neighborhoods are substandard,
Yes.
then it's a system that's designed for us to fail.
Absolutely.
And so it amazes me how people like Trump, he'll come and say, well, why haven't you guys fixed these neighborhoods? They're not set up to be fixed.
Right.
It started with segregation when you all said, you guys stay over there,
Right.
and we're gonna be over here.
Absolutely.
And we have the money, we have the banks,
Right.
we have the homes, we
Yes.
have the people with all the money.
Yes.
How are we supposed to make it?
Yes.
And so now that you have a few people that are successful, now it's like, oh, see, they did it. And
And that's, that's a pet peeve.
Oh, that
for
irritates me
where
so
you
much.
go and pick certain African Americans or Hispanic Americans
Right.
and say, wow, they pulled themselves up from their bootstraps and look what they've done. Like even my brother, whose grandfather or whatever came from the plantation, and now he's in politics.
Right.
And so he himself, this is my pet peeve. I
Man.
understand them saying it, but when y'all say it, there's a problem.
There's a big
and
problem.
you're saying, look at me, we were on the plantation and now I'm in politics. Baby, there's an exception to every rule.
To every
and
rule.
It wouldn't be a rule. We wouldn't need an exception if there wasn't a rule there.
Right.
So there is a rule of racism that causes us to go grab people and say, look at the exception.
Right.
All of us would be able to go from plantation to politics if that was the route
case.
we wanted to go.
Exactly.
So, and you know what? You got there on our backs just like the rest of the ones
Just
sitting
like
up
the
there.
rest
So
of
like
them.
get a grip, get an
And
understanding.
I want to say this too, because there's a lady out there named Candace Owens.
Yes.
And she has this thing that they asked her about making America great again. When was America ever great for black people?
Right.
So what she talked about, and I had to go do some research, because listening to her, you'd be like, oh, that makes sense, right? But when you go do the research, what she's talking about is the Reconstruction period.
Yes.
After the North defeated the South,
Absolutely.
right, there became about 7-8 years of Reconstruction. And in this time, black people were able to build cities,
Yes.
have wealth,
Did
have
very
banks.
well.
But what she doesn't tell you is that white America came and burned it all down.
I mean, down.
Because they didn't want to see black people flourish.
Yes.
So America has never been great for us.
No.
It's always been a struggle, and I pray that it ends soon.
Yes.
But as of now, it feels like it'll always be, because it's not about an individual person with a prejudice. It's about a system that you're fighting that's set up for you not to win.
And it's hard to fight a system, and a system can be fought.
Right.
And you can, win. It's like a disease that has attacked your body.
Right.
And it's not just your knee, it's not just your finger, it's in your system.
Your system, right.
And so it's difficult and it takes time, and people need to know just because you marched on Saturday is going to be different on Monday. That's not happening.
Right.
But that we keep the march going, which is like infusing into your system to fight this disease that has taken over.
Right.
And we have to fight it until the disease dies. We can't do it like some people do antibiotics and you got a bad cold or bronchitis or
Right.
whatever. And it's in your system and it's growing and it's getting worse. So you go and get a Z-Pack or go and get some antibiotics and you take half of it because you start feeling better, which is what we've done in the past.
Right.
From the 60s, we start feeling better. They start giving folks jobs and
Right.
building a few things around Watts
Just
and
enough to
stuff.
appease
And
you.
They did Martin Luther King Hospital in
Right.
Watts and appease people just
Holiday.
enough to make you feel better. And then the next thing you know, that initial disease that was there from the beginning because you didn't keep fighting that thing gets bigger,
Bigger and
worse.
comes back.
Its ugly head is showing itself
And again,
right
you
now.
never fight the system.
No.
We give you a little bit to be quiet,
Yes.
but we never change the system.
right.
And I'm realizing, the older you get, these things become more important, because when
Yes.
you're young, it almost seems like you don't care.
Right.
But the older I get, you really start to see how things are set up for you not to make it.
Right.
And so, yeah, we can go to school and yeah, we can do these things. But when we're in 2020 and we're still seeing the first black person to ever be this
Yes.
or be that, that really shows you how far we are behind.
And it's awful. We didn't just get here yesterday.
Right.
It'd be different. And the other part of the system that underlying, because the disease will be there and then the disease brings underlying things. And so within that system, you'll do a division of minority groups because you'll suppress this top group, African Americans,
Right.
but you'll give loans to Asian Americans and others, and those folks will come and set up shop and businesses
In
in the
black communities.
African American community,
Yeah.
which causes dissension among them when the fight is not them, the fight is the system.
The system.
And what I'm glad about is that if we look at the marches and look at what's going on, we see a cross range of racial
people,
groups
diverse,
and people
yes.
that have gotten and understand, like, wake up, America. It is not just one group, but one thing falls on the other thing.
And it's going to take all of us
It is.
to change the system. And what we're finding out is that as systems start to change, because now across the country, they're going into police headquarters and they're saying, okay, this is wrong.
Yes.
Why are y'all doing this? And we start questioning those things
Right.
that are in place to affect us.
Yes.
And so I think the marches are great. I thank God for those who marched before us.
Yes.
But I think we're at a stage now where it's time to get into the systems.
It is. It's time to look
It's
at
time to
them
look in and say,
look
yeah.
at what's going on. And like people have become blatant. And so it's not even undercover racism anymore. They take platforms and just say, like the sheriff in Portland that says, we just need to arrest all of them. And if the jail's not big enough, let's build some bigger jails, he
Right.
said. Let's build bigger prisons. And let's not put a sentence on these people who are marching. Let's just put them in prison and let them just die out there. Okay, there's something about your character, something
Right.
about your integrity. Now, we're not foolish. We know there's criminals out there,
Right.
and there needs to be a place for criminals. But everybody is not a criminal, and
Right.
you cannot criminalize our color just because you have an issue with it.
Because you have an issue. And it's, there's so many levels to this. Even the promotion of our struggle.
Yes,
America loves to hear how we struggle
yes,
and what we come out of to be a football player. Not
Right.
a lawyer, not a
Right.
doctor,
Right.
not a person in position
Right.
to make systemic changes,
Yes.
but it's entertainment for them.
Yes.
And I hate to say it, but when you look at what used to be, how
Yes.
we were just strictly entertainment,
yes,
that's all they really want us to be now.
Right.
It's entertainment. Even to the point where they're trying to ban watching the NFL because these athletes want to voice their opinions.
Right.
This is not a place for that. Well, then we can't march because then we're looters and
We're
troublemakers.
robbers,
If we
yes.
do something like take a knee,
Yes.
now we're anti-America.
Right.
How do we get the point across
Right. How do we
that
get
we
that
don't
to-
want to be a part of this anymore?
yes. And as,
that's the
as
system.
We're basing this segment on this great man that he says we need to get in good trouble. And sometimes it's a good thing to break a bad law.
Yes, it is.
And it is, that is where we are. And I'm encouraged that that's where we are across the world, because
Right.
to see all of these countries marching, and let me say, marching is not against the law.
It's not.
It isn't. And I also want to say something else. We do not advocate in the march that you go shoot a policeman.
Absolutely
I
not.
don't want them shot any more than I want them to
because they
shoot
have
my
families
son.
and they got to go home
Yeah,
too.
come on now.
We
that's
just want
not-
to be, and the hard part is, why can't people understand? We just want to be equal.
Yes.
And part of me, and I know this is going to probably cross a line, but this is real talk. This is how I really feel. It's almost like the system is scared for us to be equal.
Yes,
And
yes.
my big thing is, what are you afraid of?
Yes.
It's easy to play big bank, take little bank when you own the bank.
Yes.
But when we're all on the even playing field, can you get that bank then?
Right.
Because I watched a video and it was this coach and he was explaining to his football team about racism. So he lines them all up and he says, okay, if you grew up with your mother and father, take a step. If you already have a college plan, take another step. He asked a bunch of questions. And
yeah.
it was sad because the black kids couldn't take a step. He said, now you're going to run to this place. He said, now all you guys who took steps, look back. He said, how can they win?
Yes.
Look how far you are ahead of them just by the extra things that you've accomplished in this system.
Yes.
The privilege that you have.
Yes.
And so I think that seems to be, to me, the clear-cut issue.
Yeah, and there's no way that it can be hidden. If you just look across the board with the economics of the deal,
Right.
that degree to degree, job to job, that black males versus white males make 17% lower. Same job,
Right.
same responsibility, same degree. And then when the president says that, while he's in office, everything got better, that unemployment was better. Okay, unemployment was better for white people.
Right.
And then for those other minorities, it was at, I think for white people, it was at maybe 7%. And for other minorities, it was somewhere around 11%. For African Americans, it was still 13% and
Right.
climbing.
Right.
So what better? Show us, when did America get better for us?
It never got better. And another thing, me being a veteran, the part that irritates me is we're still screaming color.
Yes.
Because when you go to overseas and you go to these different countries and you fight for your country, they only see Americans.
Yes.
They don't say, hey, that's a black soldier, shoot him.
Right.
Or that's a white soldier. They see the green uniform, they see the flag, and they say that is America. If they can acknowledge us as one whole
Yes.
in a war, why can't we acknowledge each other as Americans? But as long as we have people saying stuff like, well, this is what I do for y'all black people, then there is no America. There's segregated cultures.
Right.
There's blacks, whites, Asians, Mexicans,
Right.
whoever else.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? In
Yes.
the Latinas and all the different communities.
Yes.
But then they want to preach we're all one country.
Yes.
We're not.
Yes, we really are.
But that's what we're trying to be.
Yeah, we would like that. I want to think those folks who are marching, and certainly those who are leading and talking, are trying to get to an even plane. That
Right.
we're all in the same place, and that opportunity presents itself to us as well as others.
Right.
And that we come from the same place to reach that finish line. Not that you got a handicap because of conceived ideas and everything,
Right.
but that all of us are running to the same place. And that hasn't happened. And you said it best. Racism has its roots in fear.
Right.
So as long as I'm fearful of you advancing beyond me, I'm going to always try to keep you down because you can't get bigger than me.
Right.
And I just can't allow that. It just isn't going to happen. And so this thing, we have to stay with it. You can't get tired.
Right.
Otherwise, we're going to have an era just like we did in the 60s.
Man.
And, across the country that there was a lot of burning and looting and all that junk going on. And then when it was over, the people who lived in that community lived with a burnt down community. And it wasn't a whole lot that was going on.
Well, to add to that, people always say, like, why when you protest, you got to loot and burn? That's the only thing America hears.
Yes. Well, America looted.
America does not hear anything but what it was grounded on.
Yeah, the Tea Party and the rest of them were based on looting and burning.
That's it.
So, we have a culture for that sort of thing, too. But
Right.
I would like to say that initiated through the Black Lives Matters, that they initiated their thing as a peaceful protest.
Right.
And most of their propaganda that they put out has to do with a peaceful
Protest.
But whenever you get to the, that peaceful protest, you always get that undercurrent of people who want to have a riot. It's
And-
like having a party.
But even in that,
You
but the setup is even in that, because I know watching CNN, and of course I wasn't there, so I didn't see all of it. You have white people looting
Absolutely.
at Black Lives Matter movements.
Oh, absolutely.
But they don't say there's white people here movement.
Yes.
All they say is we have Black Lives Matter and they're looting and they're
Right,
they're
right.
white.
Right.
I've seen white people burning buildings up to the
Right,
point
so
where they
have
had
I.
black people saying, "Man, don't burn
Don't do
that.
that.
What are you
Stop
doing?
that."
You're
Yes.
messing up what we're trying to do."
Yes,
But
yes.
it's only color when it's beneficial,
Yes.
and that is a clear system.
It is a clear system.
So then we get into us as being church figures.
Yes.
When we have Black Lives Matter movements and things of these nature, then it becomes, what is the church doing?
Well, that was a big question initially when we saw, bam, 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 person after person being killed and
Right.
mishandled by the police. And people were looking for leadership. And certainly in the 60s,
Right.
most of the leadership came from the church and primarily the Baptist church. And then others got involved in it. And so
Right.
I have to admit, I hadn't heard earlier on that the church had a unified movement that the community could walk behind. So
Right.
here we are, and we've got Black Lives Matters who's organizing and pulling people in.
Right.
And then we have a fragmented group of church leaders who want to fight against the group that tried to organize and get the thing going. And so
Right.
they're not, my position is this, they're not trying to start a church. They're not trying to preach Jesus.
Right.
They're not trying to proselytize.
Right.
They're trying to focus a movement for the good of a
black
community.
people.
So for that reason, I'm all in. That if we're talking about, Black Lives Matter, let's fight for it. Let's bring the system down. Let's move in that direction. I'm 100% for that.
Right.
Now, I had someone else tell me, well, they believe in this and they believe in that and they adhere to things that the church doesn't stand for. Well, y'all's president do too, and some of y'all gonna vote for him.
Exactly.
So my feeling is this, and
Preach.
you could write me or whatever, but we have a person in office that you still support that brutalizes women, that is up on charges for rape right now.
Right now.
And that you still support. So I am not a member of Black Lives Matter, and
Neither am
I
I.
probably won't join in terms of being a full-fledged member
right.
because of some of the things that they adhere to that go against my belief system.
Right.
But I believe if we look at a community of houses, the black houses are on fire. All of us got houses. All of us need the fire department, but today,
Right.
black houses need the fire department because our house is on fire. And they're
Exactly.
leading the race to that. I'm in the race with them because they're leading the race to that.
Right, and I just feel like, again, I feel like you. I'm not a Black Lives Matter activist
Yes.
by any means.
Yes.
I'm black.
Yes.
I don't have to be a black. I live this.
Amen.
This is what I wake up in.
Yes.
So of course my life matters, but I think that everything that we try to do, they did it with the NAACP.
Yes.
It's always coming against America. No, it's coming against the system.
System.
And that's what they're upset about.
Yes.
That these people are saying we're tired of the system.
Right.
And I love to see the multifaceted group.
Yes.
Because I think young white America doesn't want to be connected to it.
Yes.
I've dealt with so many young men that have said, look, my grandfather's racist and
Yes.
I don't even like my grandfather.
Right,
Because
right.
that stuff isn't right.
Right.
So I think as the one hope that I do have is as society begins to replenish and generations die out, that this will die out with them.
Yes,
Because
yes.
it's at a point now, we're at a point in society, we're at a point mentally that we shouldn't be dealing with this in America.
Right,
Especially when this is not even. Some white people think that America is theirs. They forget that they also too got on the boat.
Yes.
And came over.
Yeah, they're
so
immigrants.
they'll tell us in a minute, go back to Africa. Well, there's some England
Right.
and there's some places you can go
can go
to.
back. Right.
So at the end of the day, only the Aborigine people,
Right.
the original, which they call Indians, which I'm sure Indians got a problem with being called Indians because I don't
Right.
think they were called Indians. They're the only people who can say we were established
Right.
here.
Right.
But what we do, here, y'all go over here to this land full of rocks and non-fertilized land, and y'all stay over here, and we'll call that a reservation.
And and I need people to know that we may be African, but we're American.
We're American.
We made America great.
Wow.
It just wasn't a great way to make it great.
Right.
But so it is great because of the backs that we had that was broken across us. And so, like, sometimes people need to see some of the disparity that goes on between the treatment in the system
Right.
and how they'll say, well, the police are fair. They do the same thing with everybody. That's not true.
That is not
They
true.
approach them differently. And for the sake of our audience, we have a few videos
Right.
that we want to show the disparity and how people are treated
And let me
by
just say this
the
real
system
quick.
of policemen.
Not only that, when people say Black Lives Matter and people come around and say, no, all lives matter, we know all lives matter. We're trying to wake you up to understand that we matter too.
Yeah, put us
because
in there.
your system of all, we're not included.
Right.
So there's a disparity in the way police, and again, I think it's fear.
Yes.
I don't know why people are so scared of black people. Like, I
Yes.
can't figure it out.
Yes.
Because they're
we've been demonized.
all across the world.
And so just your color, you could be Poindexter with round glasses and walk around, but because your skin color demonizes you.
Until you invent something.
Because, all of us want to steal and all of us want to stab. So, that's kind of what the thought is, and that's what's projected. But let's look at these videos.
Yeah, we have some very disturbing videos, and I hope that we have more than just the church world or just the black culture watching this show, because we are not prejudiced by any means.
No.
We're just literally stating facts. And when you tell the truth, you shouldn't be titled as prejudiced for being honest.
Right.
So these are two disparities of two different cop calls and how things play out. And again, this is very disturbing. And yes, we're showing it the way the newscasters showed it, because we want you to see the real truth.
Send us
in
your
the matter.
questions and comments.
So the first one, I'm just going to prepare it. Mr. David Ware was pulled over by the police, I think it's in Oklahoma or somewhere, and we're going to watch this video now. So again, please, if you have small children, you might want to turn them away, but here comes the clip.
The following presentation contains subjects and videos that are considered controversial and may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Tulsa police, as you know, released that body cam and dash cam video of David Ware shooting Sergeant Craig Johnson and our officer Arash Zarkashan. News on 6's Reagan Ledbetter is live now with the story. Reagan?
Lori and Craig, Attorney Scott Wood tells me traffic stops are one of the most dangerous things a police officer can do. They never know what they're dealing with or what can happen. Now, he says it makes him angry that what should have been a minor traffic stop led to an officer being killed.
David, step out of the car.
Tulsa police say the two officers told David Ware to get out of the car more than 40 times before using force.
The officers gave him numerous commands and a lot of time to reach the right decision to get out of the vehicle.
We need you to step out of the car.
TPD says the officers warned Ware 7 times before tasing him.
A lot of people think, hey, a taser is kind of a magical deal. All you do is pull the trigger and they go down. And that's not the case.
Attorney Scott Wood is an expert in use of force. He says these officers did what they are trained to do, but after struggling with Ware, he grabbed a gun and shot both officers.
It's hard to gain control over somebody who does not want to be controlled. This is seemingly a nothing traffic stop for an expired tag, and the car is going to be towed. You just wouldn't expect this kind of thing to happen.
Wood says traffic stops can be extremely dangerous because each time you're walking into an unknown.
Get out! You got him. What the? What? What the? What the?
Very disturbing.
Yes.
And so I want to just look at the facts. The facts are they asked this man 40 times to get out of his car. 40 times. And there's a thing that says this took about 17 minutes. And this man ended up killing these police officers.
Wow.
40 times they asked him to get out of the car.
Awful.
I'm sorry, he ended up killing one of the officers and wounding the other officer
Yes.
pretty bad. And so that's one take on being pulled over. As you can tell, they talked to him, they communicated with him, they worked with him as much as they could.
Went over and beyond.
Over and beyond.
Yes.
Or depending on, it should be, they did what they were, I don't know what their protocol was,
Yes.
but clearly they made it clear that we don't want to hurt you.
Right.
We just want you out the car.
Right.
Right? He never mentioned he had a gun.
Yes.
Or anything. And then he comes out of the car by force and ends up killing an officer and wounding another one.
Yes.
17 minutes they dealt with him. Now we're going to cue you into this next clip, and this is Philando Castillo, and we're going to see his stop and what the differences are and why truly Black Lives Matter. Y'all watch this.
It took just seconds for a routine traffic stop to turn deadly, and today graphic video of the encounter was made public just a few days after a Minnesota police officer was found not guilty of manslaughter. Mireya Villarreal reports.
The newly released dashcam video shows the moment when Officer Geronimo Yanez stopped Philando Castile for a broken taillight last July, first asking Castile for his license and registration.
I have to tell you, I do have a firearm on me.
Don't reach for it then.
Don't pull it out.
Don't pull it out.
Within 90 seconds of making the stop, the 29-year-old officer fired 7 shots. Castile's girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, was in the passenger seat. She streamed the immediate aftermath on Facebook Live.
I told him not to reach for it. I told him to get his hand out.
You told him to get his ID, sir, and his driver's license. Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead. Please don't tell me my boyfriend just went like that.
Keep your hands where they are, please.
Yes, I will, sir. I'll keep my hands where they are.
As Officer Yanez continued to point his weapon at Castile, you can see an officer coax and pick up Reynolds' then 4-year-old daughter, who was in the back seat during the shooting.
Get the baby out of here!
Yanez was quickly suspended from the St. Anthony, Minnesota Police Department and soon indicted for manslaughter. During the trial, Yanez said he feared for his life and thought Castile, a 32-year-old school cafeteria worker, was pulling out a gun he was licensed to carry. Friday, the jury acquitted Yanez of all charges. Valerie Castile is Philando's mother.
My firstborn one son died here in Minnesota. Under the circumstances, just because he was a police officer, that makes it okay. Oh, now they got free reign. He's found innocent on all counts.
Jesus. Wow.
Wow.
That's something.
So when you say Black Lives Matter, now here this man did the right thing.
Yes.
I just took a CCW class, and that was one of my questions. What do I do when I have a legal right to have a weapon in my car and I'm pulled over? The first thing you're supposed to do is let that police officer know that you have a weapon. He let him know. The other stop, this guy had a weapon, never said anything, wouldn't even get out of the car. This man greeted him with respect, said, "Sir, I want to let you know, according to CCW laws, that I have a weapon." Then the man said, "I need to see your license." I can't just make it appear.
Right.
I got to reach and grab
get
it.
Yes.
And soon as he reached, this man shot him close range in front of his girlfriend and kids and killed the man.
Yes. And you see the disparity between the two, that 17 minutes long of pleading and talking and grabbing and all of that, as opposed to this man of color.
90 seconds.
Just a few seconds to
90
take
seconds
that man's
after
life.
he was stopped, he was killed.
And then no one is convicted.
No one's convicted. And then they wonder why you say Black Lives Matter. What else do we have to? And there are so many videos of this over and over. Just with George Floyd.
Yes.
The man put his knee on his neck and smiled at the cameras that were recording him.
Yes, it was awful.
While the other police watched. And it's like, do you know the message that you're sending America when you do that? Yes. You're saying there's a disparity between black people and white people when it comes to policing.
Yes, and that they don't matter.
I've seen videos where white people have chased police officers and the police officers ran.
Right.
You'll never see that in the black community.
Oh, no,
it's shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah.
Black lives do matter.
Yes.
And that's all this Black Lives Matter thing is about. So I don't want to hear that all lives matter.
Yes.
We know all lives matter.
Yes,
it's just that you guys don't think our lives matter.
We're not part of the all. So what we're trying to do is infiltrate the all and put us in there as part of the all.
And once you treat us like all, we will proudly, I will stand on top of the stratosphere and say, all lives matter.
Yes, yes.
But until then, man, hey, look at us, we matter.
Yes,
and that's a crucial issue.
It's important.
Yes.
And we need to stay here until all lives matter.
And then on top of that, the part that irritates me is I saw our president. I fought for this country. He's our commander-in-chief. He is in every building in the military. His picture's up there. We fought and bled like everybody else. But the crazy part, we had to fight, which is a whole nother thing, and we'll get on that another topic. But it's like when the commander-in-chief won't even say they were wrong. He said sometimes things happen, it goes so quick. So, there's a couple bad apples. Yes. We got a list of bad apples.
No, we got a tree. It's the system. The root system is bad. The apples can only be bad because the root system is corrupt.
And let me tell you, there's a ton of drugs in rich white neighborhoods.
Yes.
But they're not policed like they are in our neighborhood. Please don't think that there isn't.
Oh,
I remember there was an opioid crisis at Gorman High School.
Yes, absolutely.
And everything was, all of a sudden it comes on the news. Oh, Gorman, there's drugs and kids are doing it. Why y'all at Rancho all the time? Why you at Cheyenne? Why you at these black schools all the time? They can't wait. We had, unfortunately, a kid died at Canyon Springs a couple years ago. And I mean, it made the news for weeks.
Yes, yes.
We have to get these schools under, under control, blah, 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 blah. But yet, there's an opioid crisis at Gorman, and it's not all over the news.
Oh, no.
They hit it once or twice, and they're done with it.
Right, get some counseling.
You know why? Because
and
Gorman's
they
in the
let go.
system.
Right, and they've got money.
And they got money. And money seems to be more powerful than lives.
Yes.
I don't think a life has a value. I don't think you
black
can.
lives don't have a whole lot of value.
But I'm saying, I don't think
like
any
that.
life, I think all lives are priceless because it's not something you can pay for. But when you start taking lives, it's like, it almost seems like, hey, as long as you're rich, you don't have to deal with this stuff.
Yeah, and the logic of that is the crazy part.
Right.
Because when you hear the logic on the one side as opposed to reality or opposed to what's actually going on, there's a big difference in what's happening. Like the other side believes that those of us on this side want communism or socialism, and we want to take people's houses, and we want not just what they have, we want theirs.
Right.
And trying to get, in reality, we want fairness across the board, like you were saying. We want guaranteed health care for everybody across the board. Like, African Americans should not have been dying the way that we died with this COVID-19 if medical conditions were right. Even in the hospitals, some of the doctors, it was documented that if somebody of African descent came in with COVID, they just let them die, because they didn't have enough ventilators anyway. So, and since a lot of them have other underlying diseases, we're not going to fight for this life. We're going to go on to other lives. So black lives matter. They have to matter on every level and every place that we are, and we have to dispel this thinking process.
And not only that, we have to educate our kids.
Yes.
Most white homes, they don't get the police talk.
Yeah.
We have to literally talk to our young men and say, look, when the police pull you over, don't flinch, don't move, don't breathe hard, don't talk a certain way, don't do a certain thing, because for us, it can cost us our lives.
Yes.
And then they say, well, why don't you trust the police? Those videos are the reason why, because it happens and only less than 1% even make the news.
Right, and it's not even just about the videos. It's about young people that our children know that have been mishandled or killed at the hands of police officers. But, on the narrative on one side is that Black Lives Matters and African Americans hate police. We don't hate police. We hate the system, and we hate the guidelines that you work under that demonizes or criminalizes African American people. And it doesn't matter whether it's female or male, you come at us differently than you do people
more
of
aggressively.
other colors. Oh, absolutely.
Extremely aggressive.
Yeah, hands on the gun, like you're ready to go.
I know this last little thing I want to hit, because this is really bothers me, is mass killings.
Yeah.
A white individual can kill 100 people. They don't get on there and say, this thug, this.
No.
They start saying, what's wrong with them?
Yeah, must be mental health.
What's wrong with his life?
Yes.
They start really looking into it, trying to figure out why would he do such a thing.
Right.
Black person does something, we're criminalized.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's how they do it. He's a hoodlum, he's a thug, he deserves this. And I'm gonna tell you, Nevada, I wanna talk to Nevada, because even here in Nevada, when we had that bad shooting in the hotel, they had the nerve to try to get the background of this dude and try to figure out what was wrong with him.
Right.
Wait, it doesn't matter what's wrong with him. He killed all these people.
Or if we're gonna do that, let's do it with everybody.
With everybody.
Not just criminalize people of color in, in
it's like we're
similar
supposed to kill, and
yes.
and if they kill, something's wrong.
And
that they
the
would do
treatment
that.
becomes totally different. Like the white kid that drove to another state to go to the church and kill the people in the church while they're in Bible study.
Sat there and listened for a while.
They talked to him. They were nice to him. And he got back in his car, drove all the way back home. The police went to the house, went inside, had a conversation with him, and then took him, got him a burger and some fries, and then took him to...
Can you believe that?
He would have been dead.
What about this last issue where they had the riots? I think it was in Minnesota.
Yes.
This militia kid has his mother bring him across state lines with an AR-15.
Yes.
17 years old.
Yes.
So that's already illegal.
Yes.
You're not even supposed to have it.
Yes.
He comes to the riot, says he's going to protect businesses, kills 2 people,
Yes.
and then walks up to the police with an AR-15 with his hands up.
And they give him water.
And guess what? He went home.
Yeah.
He killed 2 people and left and went home, and they had to go get him.
And then if you see the narrative behind it, they start talking about people are misusing this kid and talking bad. He's only 17.
Unbelievable.
And he's just a kid. And so the differences in that is just, it's clear. You have to be blind not to see.
And the police
this.
were thanking him for being there.
Yes.
He's
thank
not
you
even a
for-
police officer. He doesn't have anything
And thank the whole militia for coming to help.
to come and
Thank
support.
you for coming. And I think, we have another clip to solidify the point that we're talking about.
Yes.
No.
Do we?
We do not.
Okay. We don't?
Okay, sorry.
But it's disgusting.
Uh-huh.
And there's no way, and I think the part that irritates me the most is Trump won't even recognize it.
Well,
He won't even say that, he'll say, oh, I mean, okay, well, things happen. It's hard. Some officers choke. Choke?
They choke with their
Why
finger
are
on
you
the gun.
choking, killing me?
And, even at the town hall meeting, I don't know if you saw that, I think it was town hall, or it was it was town hall, where the gentleman was talking to him about when was, you say make America great, and you've coined that phrase. When was it great for African Americans, especially, and he went on with the racism in the community of like that. And so the president, his response was, I hope there isn't racism. What?
I hope.
Okay, so since you hope, does that means it's not? Because you say it, there isn't.
This is the same man who bought a whole page in the New York Times, if I'm not mistaken, or one of those paperworks for the 5.
Yes.
They were innocent, and he's not in law enforcement. No. He's not one of the victims or of the person. He just said, you know what? Let's put out a clip. Let's go buy a newspaper thing, and let's just dog these folks.
Yeah, they did, and he kill them. They need to be lynched. They need to be. He went in on that
and never spoke on why when they were innocent. He didn't have nothing to say after that.
And we can't get a positive statement from him about any of the Black American lives that have been taken on the streets in America. Nothing positive. Nothing I'm praying for the family. Nothing I'm reaching out. Or my heart hurts because of the things that are going on. Nothing to say, let's change this. Even if I don't understand it. I don't understand what's happening. I don't know how it's coming about like this. But I'm going to take a little bit of time to look at what's going on in my America. He's not even man enough to sit up and say something like that.
He is fueling racist people.
He is.
Because no matter what black person dies, regardless of what George Floyd was, they called on a $20, a fake $20 bill. And this man died for a fake $20 bill.
Yeah.
But people who kill hundreds of people can walk away and be handcuffed and took to jail.
Yeah, and get a hamburger.
And water and probably,
and others.
It just doesn't make sense to us.
Yeah. So like him feeding that we hate police and that we want to kill babies and that we want to rewrite history because the history's not, no, we don't want to rewrite it. We want to tell what it actually is. Tell the unadulterated truth.
And when you bring up slavery, you know what they say? Oh, that was a long time ago. What?
But it's part of history. It is part of history. If you want to teach us
It wasn't that long.
about Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, John Adams, and all of these people, somewhere laced in what they were doing was slavery. And the bringing and servitude of a race of people for the promotion of this nation, it needs to be put out
And they have to
there.
understand the Constitution was never written for black people because
No,
we were
it
only
wasn't.
considered 2/3 of a person.
That's right.
We weren't even a whole Imagine growing up and somebody says, you're not a whole person, you're 2/3 of a person.
Yes, yes, yes.
2/3?
Yeah, it's awful.
And if you have a drip of black in you, you black.
Yes. But I noticed that we had looked at some of the tweets in terms of
Yes.
the present president fueling the fire of racism.
Fueling.
And so were you going to share some
Yes.
of those with us today?
Look at this. This is what he said about black people. Trump told black voters, you're living in poverty, your schools are no good, you have no jobs, 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the HELL do you have to lose?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what he told.
Yes.
Look, y'all ain't doing, so all he basically said is the systemic racism is working.
Yeah.
Why y'all mad about it?
Right, right, right.
Are you serious?
Yeah, yeah.
And this is why it irritates me when you have black voters for Trump.
Yes.
How are you black? And if you're a minority, listening to this man spew this hate, how do you fix your mouth to say, I'm going to vote for him? Not saying that he doesn't have some views that I even agree with.
Right,
There's some things he says that I agree with. And so
absolutely.
I'm not tripping on all of his standards or the things that he's trying to get done because some of it makes sense.
Yes.
But you're basically telling us stay in your place, black person.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Trump often acts like majority black cities in the United States are war zones. Our inner cities are a disaster, Trump said. You get shot walking to the store. They have no education and they have no jobs. I wonder why, Trump.
Yes. Yeah.
You're looking at the effect and you're denying the cause.
Right, because who sets up the educational system and who puts jobs out there for people to get? It is the system, and that's what we're fighting. That if we could change the system, that will change the whole thing.
Another one, LeBron James, who, in my opinion, I don't feel he's the best basketball player ever. I give that to Michael Jordan. However,
no.
he is one of the best people.
He's the GOAT.
He's one of the best people ever.
Yes.
As far as what he does in the community.
He is.
Here's what Trump says. Trump routinely deploys the racist trope that black men are less intelligent. This is what he said. LeBron James was just interviewed by the dumbest man on television, Don Lemon, he tweeted. He made LeBron look smart, which isn't easy to do. I like Mike.
Well,
why are you, as a president, commenting on an athlete and his views? You're the president. And if everyone has a right to speak, why would you go spew that hate? You know why? Because I know that I got a plethora of racists behind me that are going to make sure that LeBron suffers.
Amen that deal.
Right.
They're going to amen that deal. But the thing is that if we're going to talk about intelligence, we need to put you up against LeBron. And intelligence doesn't weigh heavy in your house either, Mr. President.
At all, because clearly he's not the brightest man alive at all.
No,
Because
there's some
there's
other
no
bulbs
way,
in that bunch.
there's no way you can be an expert at everything. He said he knows more than the military.
Yeah, right. And right now we know he knows more than the scientists that are trying to find a cure for COVID.
Oh, I know COVID. Don't nobody know COVID like me.
Yeah. So,
but yet, when we say all these people are dying and they're constantly dying, he has no answer.
And
everything's going good. You know how many lives would have died?
I don't understand how immigrants can get behind and say they're going to vote, because one of his tweets from May 2018, Trump called undocumented immigrants animals at a meeting with reporters in the White House. He says, you wouldn't believe how bad these people are. They aren't people. These are animals. And you're still going to vote for this person. You're still coming out. He called you rapists and killers. And you think, what, he just had a bad day? Or he doesn't really feel like that? That, if somebody tells you who they are,
believe it.
Believe it. You can't say, oh, they meant this, because, his handlers they'll get up and say, well, he didn't mean it quite like that. You didn't take it right. No, we took it just like he said it, and we believe just what he says. He says there isn't a racist problem in the United States. I believe just what he says, that he is not going to do anything about the system because he doesn't see the system as being a problem.
And you know what the sad part is that the Mexican population or the Hispanic population, for some reason, there is a clash between blacks and Hispanics.
Yes.
And it's so unfortunate because
Yes, it is.
we really should be in this together.
Yes.
Because Trump does not make he equally hates us all.
Yes.
And even these are a couple things that he said about the Mexican people. Trump launched his presidential bid with these infamous comments.
Yes.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you people that have lots of they're sending you people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems to us. They're bringing drugs, bringing crime. They're rapists, and some I assume are good people.
Yes.
I just don't get it.
And you know, it shows itself on the news all the time because even, you know, with white women getting involved, all the Karens of the United States, that they approach black people as if you're not intelligent based on your color. So they're always trying to instruct somebody, always trying to tell them what, like the gentleman who was in the line for the business line for people who were getting on the airplane early.
Right.
And, you know, he had on his sweatsuit and everything, getting comfortable.
I saw that.
He didn't have his business suit on. He had sweatsuits and stuff on, tennis shoes. And so little blonde taps him on the shoulder and said, I think you're in the wrong line. Okay, out of all the people in the line, what makes you think this man? Because he's a black man in the line. Ain't nobody else black but him. So obviously, that's not the black line. You in the wrong line. So just that privilege and that, you know, it's not racism. It's the way it is. We're supposed to have privilege.
Right.
It is supposed to be this way. And you people need to get in your place and act right, which is the narrative of the other side.
And the sad part is when you as an individual have faced that.
Yes.
I remember one time I was in a Louis Vuitton store.
Yes.
Can't make this up. My wife had her last bout with chemo, and I wanted to give her something that she's always wanted. And Louis Vuitton purses are extremely expensive. I didn't know at the time.
You preach it to the choir.
But I purchased one. But do you know when I went into the store, no one even acknowledged me?
Yeah.
I watched as I was looking, because you know there's no price tags.
Yes, I know.
So you got to ask the folks how much it costs.
Right.
So I see all these people come in, hello, how are you doing? Hello, how are you doing? I come in, nothing. So at the time, I had about $3,000 cash on me. And you know, there's some days you just feel that kind of way. And the lady, I have to go up to the cashier. No, just at this time, I just happened to.
Okay, I
right.
mad at
So
you.
I went to the cashier, and that was to keep me, balanced.
I got you.
I ain't spending past this, right? And so I go in there and I say, excuse me, can I get help? I would like to buy a purse.
Yeah.
And the lady says, do you know how much they are? I said, that's why I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
Because clearly there are no price tags displayed.
Right.
And I said, better yet, and I had to show her the money. I said, I came for a purse. Oh, okay, sir. I'm sorry. What are you sorry about? But these are the things that we face on a daily basis when you go in the store, all eyes on you.
Right.
You can't just buy something.
Right.
We've had numerous trials where they do these things. They had this other thing where they put two people on the street with an AR-15, and it was both legal. They had the white guy on the AR-15, they had the black guy. Man, with the white guy, hey, what are you doing, sir? Why are you walking around? Real calm. The black guy, oh, it's 10 police cars.
Oh, yeah.
What is he possibly doing with a weapon?
Right. And you black.
And you black. Well, that's why I guess black people shouldn't have anything.
Yeah, not a weapon anyway.
And it almost seems like they're surprised, saying, wait a minute, this ain't the way the system's set up. You're not supposed to have a nice house.
The whole crew of you are criminals, and we have, you're rapists and killers, and just because by birth, that's what you are. That's how we see you when you come. People cross over to the other side just because you're black. I bet we got a horde of questions out there because you know you've
Yeah.
been cutting up in here today.
This is a topic
This has
for
been-
me.
And good grief, let's see who we've
People
got on
think
the
that
line.
pastors don't feel. We feel.
Oh, we people.
We're
real
black.
people, real people. So we're going to hear what questions we have out there.
Pastors have feelings too, right?
Yes,
Hey,
I can say that. We have feelings.
pastors' lives matter.
That's
we're
right.
not numb to this stuff.
Pastors are included in the all.
Because when we get pulled over,
there
they don't
we
say,
go.
"Are you a pastor?"
Right.
So you know what I do? I show my veterans card.
Hey, there we go.
I give them my ID and my veteran ID. Because I have to do something just to let them know, like, hey, I'm not here for trouble.
Right.
For anyone that's interested in sending a question, you can send your questions to nbrealtalk@gmail.com. Again, that is nbrealtalk@gmail.com.
All right.
And while we get those questions coming in, I actually had something that I wanted you two to address. And it is the privilege of being an individual. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when a white person does something, they're treated as an individual.
Right.
If we do something, we represent our whole race.
Right.
Right.
If they steal, that person stole.
Yes.
If
Right.
a black person steals, it's black people are thieves.
Yes.
Right.
So can you talk about the privilege of being an individual and how that can be something that can fuel the rage inside an individual when I made a mistake, me, but now a whole race of people pays for the mistake of one individual.
Right.
Yeah, it's an awful stigma. Awful, awful, awful stigma because the bottom line is because you're skin to me don't make you kin to me. And so because you do things as somebody who's skin to me doesn't mean that I do what you do. It doesn't mean that I think what you think. I know even in the profession that I was in, that if something happened or they saw something on the news, because I was approachable, people would come and say, well, why would black people do that? And so I'd have to respond, well, black people didn't do that. George, you saw on the news, did that.
Right.
And he did it for his reasons. And he doesn't represent the black nation, neither do I. I'm not the voice for black people. So it's offensive for you to come and ask any black person unless they are sitting in political office and consider themselves a mouthpiece. Even the young lady that you spoke of earlier,
Candace Owens.
Candace Owens. It is offensive that she has established herself as a mouthpiece for African Americans. It offends me.
It offends me
I
too.
didn't vote for her. She doesn't speak for me, and her ideology is not mine. So the first part of dealing with personal racism is to be able to see each of us as an individual, varied and gifted and talented. And yes, some in that group are criminals, just like some in your group is criminals.
Right.
And some of them have varying degrees
Trump's
of talents.
Trump's
and
majority of
understanding.
his cabinet has been
So
fired and went to prison.
If you are an intelligent person and you are going to deal with people intelligently, you need to take people as they come and not make blanket statements. That's my statement about it.
Yeah,
That
no,
deal.
I just, honestly, when I really honestly look at that, that happens in a lot of different ways. Because I think even police officers get that.
Yes.
One police officer does something bad, now
That's
all the police are
true.
bad. So that's a common thing that I think America loves to lump people together.
Yes.
I think the problem is that black people have been under the stigma for so
Oh,
long
yes.
that it does not matter how successful you are, what you accomplish in life, to them, you're 2/3 of a person.
Yes, and it's crazy, the stigma, and I know we could go deep with that, but I'm gonna end it at this, that all African Americans aren't from the South, and all of us weren't raised poor. Now some of us
Right.
were, I was one of them, but all of us weren't raised poor. That some were even years ago middle class African Americans. So you can't lump us all into the same type of thing. Use your brain, be intelligent, deal with people as they come at you.
Right.
So you brought up Candace Owens. So, what do you think about her not being included at the Republican National Convention? Since she was such a big part of,
typical.
it's like someone, I think it was Sharitha, had posted on the feed, entertainment slavery. So she's been in entertainment for them for years.
Yes.
She's been singing their praises.
Yes.
And on
And
this
she's too
national
young. She hasn't
stage,
even lived long enough.
when they had the opportunity to say, "Here is our champion," they said, "Sit down."
Yeah.
Would that be? I guess to me, I'd be like, "Oh, so while I'm raising ruckus, you can accept me, but now that I'm." Now that you have the chance to put me on a national stage and probably legitimize her, I guess.
Yeah.
They didn't.
And that's how entertainment goes, though, isn't it? That you get to pick and choose, and maybe you want this type this time or that type another time. So it tells us, like, beyond what we already know about this little girl. What it tells us is that she is not who she thinks she is.
At all.
With them. They don't see you as an important factor on their level. And it's just like this little bitty puppy that's barking and causing noise and getting on everybody's nerves. And you're black and you're going to talk about black people. We want you the same way I feel about those pastors and ministers who have taken the platform to talk about the president being God's man, and that God has chosen and appointed him, for this point. That, we're going to give you a platform. Come on.
Yeah, because we're going to put money in your church. We're going to pay you to come.
Reverend Timbuktu, we're going to write you a check too. Come on, because there was always slaves in the big house. And the slaves in the big house always beat the field slaves worse than what the slave master did.
Yep.
So,
and the slave masters hired them to keep the slave. And you know what it reminds me of? I promise you, almost reminds me of the children of Israel.
Yes.
This whole Moses situation. It reminds you of the same concept, except now we just black.
Okay.
But
I thought he was going to preach.
I'm not going to preach, but I'm just saying.
He was going to get it.
It's just frustrating, I think. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I agree with Trump's certain views of Trump.
Yeah.
But as a black person, how do you get through the rhetoric?
Yeah.
That's the only thing. Like, how do I get through the black people? Just deal with it. Y'all all right? And then they say, black employment has went up. Anybody can work for $8 an hour. That ain't employment.
No, it's not a reasonable
We
wage.
just giving you chips so you can shut up.
Right.
Absolutely. While we're talking about good trouble, role models. So when we were coming up, there were a lot of political role models. You had the Martin Luther Kings, and you had even like the Jesse Jacksons and the John Lewises. You had them there at the forefront. Part of our issue seems to be we don't have political role models like we used to, that actually stood on our cause firm. Now a lot of our role models are spread thin.
Yes.
They're covering women's issues,
Yes.
LGBTQ issues, policing issues, school issues, to where we're finding now our leaders are putting us in a small percentage of the issues they address. How can we get back to a place where we are important politically amongst ourselves and not just counting on these few role models to really represent us in a political arena?
Well, let me just say this, and this is a long answer, but I'm going to try to do it short as possible. We have changed our heroes because we have seen where the money is willing to be distributed. Rap music has become the essential music, hip hop of this day and age. But if you look at the majority of it, it is a representation of the downgrade of the black society. I'm a victim. I'm sure there's a lot of people victim to listening to it and esteeming it. But these people are becoming rich. Athletes are becoming rich. And when you have been at the bottom so long, you just want to have something. And so now our young people are more guided toward people who have money in what they call success versus what truly matters. So it's kind of like this. I can listen to a Martin Luther King speech, or I can go play football and become a millionaire. So I'd rather look up to the LeBron James, the Lamar Jacksons, because I see them successful. And a lot of us, when we get to a certain economic level, we don't want to deal with the struggles and the problems anymore, because in our minds, we made it. And I think once you decide that you've made it, now you begin to look down on the ghettos and the projects the same way that the system looks down on and you want to separate yourself to say, I'm not that type of black person.
And you know, in the 60s, it was a different cultural environment.
Right.
That our educated people, with esteem, the pastors of the huge churches, lived in the same community as people who were struggling.
Right.
And so like your role models were pretty much, especially maybe in rural America more so than inner city, were living in the same place. You had hands-on. You touched them people. Folks went to church with Martin Luther King, and their church fellowship with the other church down the street. And so the movement starting there in his church, in his neighborhood, those people knew who he was. Okay, so the systemic change in the culture has to do with money. So we had this whole narrative that money changes everything, that people don't care. We even have actors saying that today, that
Right.
people don't care about your color when you have some money. Well, okay, that's good and bad. Like, so like you're no color because you got $1 million. And you shown up black because you're not close to that. So there's still an issue with that deal. And what we allowed, and I say we because I'm in this cultural community too,
Right.
that we've allowed economics to move us away from the
issues.
need. We thought that living, you know, up on the hill up there, segregated or separated me from the issues that were happening around in here. So if I don't have to live with it next door or down the street, then I'm not of it. You know, I ain't in it, I ain't of it. I'm over here, I'm doing my, so we became, instead of a close-knit cultural group of people, we became segregated and separated by means of economics. Because since we couldn't change the system, we tried to fit in with it.
Right.
And trying to fit in hasn't worked any better than trying to change it. So now we are
And
full circle fighting to change it
Our
again.
goal is not to be successful, it's to be like the white people.
Yes.
Our goal is to, I want to have what they have.
Right.
Not that I want to have something, because we realize that they represent really the American dream.
Yes.
So once and here's another thing that is kind of irritating that I learned in certain groups. When you get to a certain status, white people treat you different.
Right. And they do, and you know,
And they're nicer, and they, hey, how you doing?
You know,
and they say that, well, you know what? You're not like everybody else.
Right, you're different.
You're
You're not
different.
like those. And we think it's a badge. No.
Yeah, I'm
not
different.
like the other ones. But the issue is this, because somebody posted on Facebook too, that, you know, some of you people who have achieved like some monetary level or whatever need to move back to, you know, the ghetto and to places like that. And some of them name streets like Jay and some other streets that. And so as I thought about it and I looked at it and looked at the comments, and you had the pros, and some people, you know, I ain't never coming back over there again, you know, and they one end to the other. And as I thought through it, my thought was that J Street and the inner city area there doesn't need my presence. They need the power of my money. So
Right.
that means we have to have a
Economics.
thought of how can I bring that area collectively, and not just me, all the black, even the churches or whatever come together. How can we economically impact, you know, the city, instead of us just getting a bigger church in that community? What part of what we're bringing in can be used to purchase fourplexes and purchase them slum houses and fix them up so people can live in that's what we need. You don't need me living next door. Me living next door to you don't change nothing. But what will change something is that the power of economics comes back to that community.
And not only that, let me say this, is that Nevada's real good at fixing up everything else.
Don't they fix everything?
The West Side is the only place that still looks the same
They jumping.
from 1980.
They
But you
jumping.
know why? They want it to be junk because they want to take it.
Yes.
So if we don't put money into it, these
gonna
people will
regentrify
eventually wash these folks out. And you have the Chinese right now coming in, buying up anything they're willing to sell.
Yes.
You know why? Because that's great property
It is.
for Las
Right.
Vegas.
It is
So if we don't fix it and just let them die out, we win.
Yes.
And I'm glad you brought up the economic impact, because I know we're talking about good trouble, but you
Yes.
brought up economic impact. And
Yes.
we had a conversation that I think everybody should be privy to about the economics involved in sports.
Yes.
And we talked about the movement for Black players to go to those historically Black colleges or go to colleges in Black neighborhoods where those dollars, those commercial dollars, sponsorship dollars, now go into a community that desperately needs those dollars. Like,
Yes.
how do you convince an athlete that got here, come to this big school versus come over here and really help build something? How can you reach them on that level?
I think that's hard for an athlete, because when you go to a HBCU, there's a whole lot of things they don't offer that these other schools offer. And so as a kid at 17, 18 years old, to have to do something, or they would consider maybe a sacrifice in order to help the Black plight, I personally don't believe that's fair to that athlete. But I think what needs to happen is that, kind of like what Deion Sanders did, if I'm not mistaken, he's now the head coach of Jackson State, I think it is. That's what we need to do. Let's get our athletes and these coaches, the ones that our athletes look up to, and let's start making them coaches. And let's start having them who have money start putting money into these schools first to make them, to give them an attraction. Because there's nothing like playing in front of 50,000 people, and then you go to a Black college and they got high school bleachers, and like kids who went to Gorman, their school at Gorman is better than the college they're going to. No one wants to do that, but I think it's us, these athletes who have made it, who have millions to spend, going and saying, you know what, we're going to support this school, and you know what, we're going to come back and give our time and our coaching ability to this school and that school. And now when these kids know, hey, I might not have the best equipment or the best, that kind of stuff, but I have the greatest coaches. And so now I can still come get coached, because what people don't understand is these colleges and these professional places, they're going to go where the talent is. They don't see color. And to be honest, they're more on the Black plight than anybody, because especially in football, because when you talk about the percentages of basketball and football players that make up the NBA and NFL, it's staggering. But now they have to go back and say, and I say the more mature ones, have to go back and say, you know what, we're going to rest here, we're going to support here, and we're going to put a whole bunch of NFL previous, players, and we're going to coach at Mississippi Valley State, which Jerry Rice came from, right? Because back in the day, they were going to get pros from those schools.
Right.
But when they started offering kids bigger, more money, more, and it's an underworld to that too,
And the
which I don't want to talk
parents.
about, and helping the parents and the parents like, man, if we go to Penn State, our lives can change.
Yeah.
And I'm just not Penn State directly, I'm just throwing a school out there. And that's why, we see trouble in sports, but it's all like Pastor was saying, it's all about money. And so I really wish that we could do, and some students have. It's easier for basketball than football, because you just need 5 good ones, it don't matter. And they start winning some tournaments. Now those TV companies, they have to start sponsoring those schools, because they want to see those kids play.
Absolutely.
Now the NBA is coming to those schools, and now they're creating a culture. But it's just a mindset of you have to want to do it.
Okay. We do have a question. It says, it's a statement and a question. It says, white people will never understand what Black lives truly mean because they never had one. The concept of empathy or compassion hasn't been important to them. How can we ever expect other people to understand our experience?
Well, let me first say, I can't make that statement, because that's a statement in totality. What we have to understand is there are millions of white people who will never understand what it means to be black, but they've seen the injustices. Black people weren't the only ones marching with Martin Luther King. Absolutely. So and that's the thing, this is not a prejudice show. We're not attacking white people as a whole. We're talking about a system that was formed by white people that's affecting Black America. There are many white people that empathize, support, have died so that they can get the agenda across that we all need to be equal. So can you teach someone or can you empathize with someone that has an issue different from yours? Yes, I think you can. But it's a matter of, again, it goes back to the system. You know what I mean? There's because the same way there's different black people, there's different white people.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And so there's white people that, man, I can't stand this racism. It gets on my nerves, but they don't know how to fix it either.
Yeah. And you know, the thing is that when you're talking about empathy and compassion, you have to check your level of it first. Right. Because we really don't know what it's like to be other cultures either. Now, we don't know what it's like to live in a Mexican culture. You know, we'll talk about their food or whatever, but that's not really what it's like. Yeah. What does it mean to live? We don't know, you know, Japanese, Chinese, whatever. To be honest with you, we don't know what it's like to live in an African culture, even though we're African Americans. Right. Now, I'd like to learn, but however, we don't know. So, they'll never know the depth of the experience that we had for 400 years as African Americans. But you can empathize with the fact that certain things did occur and continue to occur that's not right. That's what just like you can go and adopt a kid over in Africa or India that's starving, and you empathize with that kid not being able to get any food. You may not have an understanding of their system or how they do things. All you know is that baby's starving, and I can pay 11 cents a day, and that kid can eat and it's that level that I don't know the ins and outs. Maybe my grandfather was a slave owner. I don't know what that's about or how they were oppressed. All I know is they were oppressed, and they don't have equality today. And so my fight and my compassion is that I want to help these people get equal. I want to help them, and that's where and everybody can jump on that one. It don't take like an infusion. It won't take you all year. Just wake up and hear the facts, and don't even hear us. Go grab a book, do some research. And you know, it's like the folks that said that the Jews did not suffer a Holocaust. It was a lie.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It didn't really happen. And so wake up, read it, go and understand it. It did occur. I don't know what it was like to stand in line to get ready to go get in the oven. I have no idea of what that felt like, watching your kids being treated at being starved for the whole year. Like I have no idea of being in chains and being brought across an ocean for 3-4 months, all shackled together. As African Americans, we don't understand it either. We ain't been on no boat like that. Right. But what we do know is that it did occur. It didn't feel good. Right. And we want to do something about it going forward.
And that we see the effects of it.
Oh,
and you know,
absolutely.
The crazy thing that really bothers me is I've heard some people say like blacks are racist too. Of course, we know we can't be that, but life is about cause and effect. And everyone looks at the effects because they're visible, but the root of it is in the ground.
Right. Yeah.
And you have to dig that root up to see why the tree is what it is. Yeah. And so I think that kind of like Pastor C's saying, we have to get back to the original point. We don't have to hash out slavery. Yeah. It's been done.
Move forward.
We can move forward. And there are some that say, give us our reparations. And, you know, that's another discussion. But at the end of the day, it's time to make a change now. And it's going to take all of us.
Right.
All of us, white, black, Mexican, anybody who lives in America, it's going to take all of us to say, you know what? It's time that we rewrite the wrongs.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, let's right the wrongs and move forward. But when you continue to act as if those things don't affect black people now, you're doing all of us a disservice.
And the country a disservice.
Like, do you know how many black people families should be rich from generations for the things they've invented that white people just put their name on because black people couldn't own anything or even get a, what are those things called? A patent for anything?
Right.
And they're just now starting to right wrongs.
Yes.
I think it was Jack Daniels, it was one of those liquors. And they went back and said, you know what, the black man really discovered this.
Yes.
And they went back and paid his family.
Yes.
You know?
That's the reparation.
That's the reparation.
If people had gotten 40 acres and a mule, just think about the generational wealth that your family could have had, you know, back then moving forward.
And when you see us prosper, don't tear us down.
Right.
When you want to give us our own, give us our own state. If that's what you can go over here, you take whatever state you give us, you're going to see black people succeed. Yeah. But when you give us, you say, this is yours, and then as soon as we exceed past your standard, you tear us down, how do we grow? Yeah. Yeah. It gotta be better.
So we got one more before we go into your final thoughts.
Okay.
And we always hear people say, I'm not voting. My vote don't count. Voting doesn't change anything. What do you say to those people who say, I am not going to vote?
My first flip comment is then don't complain.
Exactly.
And so that, you know, and I hear all of it that it doesn't change anything and it doesn't help and they're going to put in who they want to put in. Now, I do think that the system is created so that they do kind of get to put in who they
electoral college,
and it's the electoral college. And I would certainly, I done signed all the petitions to have that baby turned over and done something. Because how do we, as Americans, all of us, the majority, vote for a person and y'all make the other person the president? There's something wrong with that system if it's for the people, by the people. But this is one thing I do believe, that we can't change systems on the outside. You have to change systems on the inside. So that means you have to get into the muck and kick and fight. You have to vote even if you know it's not going to make a difference, because you got to get in the system to cause a change. The other part of that is that the president is not the end all. Right. That ain't the end of your vote. So if you don't want to vote for president, okay, don't vote for president. But you need to vote for the Congress. You need to vote for judges. You need to vote for articles that's going to change stuff in your community, that's going to cause money to go to your school, in your community, give teacher raises, change the medical system in your community. On some level, you can't throw in the towel on all voting. Otherwise, you are not eligible to complain about something that you're not trying to help make better.
And I just want to say, I felt that way. I was in the military and felt that way. Man, voting don't matter, because when you really take government, you know, all these different classes in political science, what you realize is, like you were saying, we have to vote the electoral college in to make sure that they vote for the popular vote of the state.
Yes.
They need to be eliminated. They're the middleman.
Yes.
For the last couple, even Al Gore. Yes. Al Gore won the popular vote.
Yes.
Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, but they're losing in the electoral college votes.
Yes, it's
so
awful.
if we're going to have an America, then it has to be the voice of all Americans, which is the popular vote.
Yes.
Whoever America, because the only way my vote truly matters is unless you can't change my vote.
Absolutely.
And the electoral college can still change my vote. And then they say, well, vote for the electoral college.
Well,
and it's like,
they?
well, who's the electoral college? So it's so much voting that doesn't make sense. They need to remove the electoral college. Whoever wins the popular vote, regardless of state, because there's still people, and people can move.
Regardless of population.
I can be in California, vote one way, and then move to Texas. I'm still the same person. So where you're at in America, if we're truly one nation, not 51 states, but one nation under God, then all our votes should matter, and the popular vote should. So, but what I would say is, please vote, because I would rather have to deal with the electoral college and slam them for going against us than for us not to vote, and then
Don't count.
the system still wins another vote during another election.
So this has been,
it's been a
it's
tough one.
heavy. I don't even need to go lift weights today.
I need to go home and
This
pray.
was, oh my God, that was some real talk. That was some real
talk,
stuff.
yeah.
But we had to do it.
Had to do
can't
it.
be all fun and dance.
Yes.
That we needed to get knee deep in that, and that was excellent. I enjoyed Ender Austin the third.
Treyway.
And he brought us some excellent information on voting, and we
Yes.
need to pull him back in as we get closer to that November 3rd date.
Yes.
So we can hear what they're doing as we get closer.
Right.
And great things. If you have something that you want to say to us, please get that email address and send that right on in. We'll be happy to go through what you've stated. We might even read it on the air. Who knows? But I'm grateful for all that, and grateful for those who helped me get in this position.
Right, and I just want to say that, number one, we're not here to bash white people.
No,
And
not
I
at
know
all.
you've heard us use that term, white people, white people. The truth of the matter is the people are white.
Yes.
And if we're going to be real talking, we got to call it what it is.
What it is.
The news has no problem saying white people, black people. Society doesn't have no problem saying white people, black people. So it just is. It is what it is. But what my final thoughts are is it's time for change.
Yeah.
I want to encourage all minorities and all those who are strongly supportive of minorities that a better day is coming. I believe that before anything is destroyed, it has to come up.
Yes.
And we have clearly, all this mess has clearly came up, and I think that laws are being changed.
Yes.
And there are some good things happening.
Yes.
And now it's time, if ever, not to turn a blind eye to the systemic push we're fighting for to change laws that destroy our communities and our children.
Yes.
So keep God first.
Yes.
And because regardless of what we talk about, we have to do that. And we have to truly believe that if we do things the right way, we'll get the right results.
Amen.
Too many people have suffered and died for us not to keep the fight alive. We're only in college because someone died so that we could be there.
That's right.
And I
Only
think
get
that
to
it's
vote.
time for us as a black community to fall in love with ourselves, to understand that we are a part of this great nation. I fought for this nation. I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be an American.
Yes, we're Americans.
But I am an American.
Yes.
You can put a color on it. You can put a stamp as far as a country, but no one's out here talking about English Americans.
No.
London Americans, where else wherever else,
German, Irish.
German Americans, Irish. No, they're just Americans. And so if you get to be an American, then it's only right that my ancestors who fought and bled and have been beaten and lynched and have created things and invented things and have had support and have stood side by side with white Americans, we deserve to be equal.
Yes.
We're not trying to say we're better than anyone. We're not trying to take your street or your opportunities.
No.
Just give us our own street and our own opportunities,
Yes.
and we'll make it, and we'll
Yes,
be just
we'll be
fine. So with that, I would say there's a responsibility for every person in America to really live out the Constitution, and that we should all be created equal. And I'm going to fight for that, and I'm going to continue to tell my children that we are not defined by a color, but we are defined by the content of our character, which Martin Luther King so eloquently spoke.
Yes.
And I'll leave it right there. But I'm not mad. I'm just on assignment for change.
And thank goodness for good trouble.
Yeah, so with that, we would just like to say we thank you all.
Thank you for hanging in today.
For hanging in with us. I know
It
we
was
started a little
heavy.
late, but we had some heavy stuff to talk about.
Yes, we
And
did.
so we wanted to make sure that we were prepared. And we love you guys.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
again, this is Real Talk. We are,
No titles,
there's no gimmicks,
no judgment,
just real people.
real issues.
This is
Real Talk.
See you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Talk. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to nbrealtalk@gmail.com. Again, this episode was dedicated to the late, great Senator John Lewis, and we'd also like to offer our condolences to the family of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.